Welcome everyone to the Flux Dev Meeting, October 17th. Do we have an agenda item topic that anyone would like to go first?
Yeah, sure. I'll uh, um I'll give the KubeCon updates. So some of you know, there's KubeCon Salt Lake City, which is in less than a month. And so we've completed the keynote video. We have our booth. I should double check. I think they were finalizing the booth number itself, and I look at the floor plan. We have a lightning talk. Of course, got the maintainer talks. And the key three people who will be there are me, Lee, and Pinky. And the final bit is we usually have a site that we put together oh, sorry, I didn't hit record. Okay, and a site that we put together that sort of highlights all these things. Sorry, I'm a little bit behind on all that. I'll be traveling next week. So thank you to Kingdon for making sure that the process for that is or updated, I guess, because we're making sure that the main site always stays the same, fluxcd.io/KubeCon, and that the last time we used that for KubeCon Paris, that site is properly archived. So there'll be a place. It'll be what now /Paris or 2024 Paris?
It's going to be in the community Git repository. So if folks want to read the history, they can go. Maybe we'll create an attic folder, but it's just in the root of the repository for now.
Okay, so is there a way for them to recreate the site if they needed to? Or
They
no?
could go back to the Flux 2.3 version, I think, and that would probably show the old KubeCon. Let me test it. Oh, well,
Okay.
we haven't updated it yet, so it's still going to be the same one. But yes, I think you can do that.
Um, and on that note, sorry, I have a little bit of a distraction here, but there's an administrative matter that I posted online is that I guess I didn't notice about Google Docs, but um, we had all these archived files that I was trying to upload to our official Flux Google Drive. But it appears that if I upload stuff to the CNCF Google Drive under the Flux repo or drive, it's still associated with my Google account. And so Google keeps telling me, you're out of storage, like you're out of storage. And I thought, well, I put this in the Flux drive. Like, why is it telling me? And it turns out, yeah, it doesn't matter. Like, so I didn't know if there was some kind of, if the CNCF gave us like a Flux Gmail with which I could log in, upload all a bunch of archived, still important documents that I want to the Google Drive, but then not have it be under my login. Anyway, we don't have to resolve this now, but I wanted to get help on that.
I have a grandfathered Google organization in my name if that would help, as long as it's not for business purposes.
No,
It's free,
purely
but
for Flux
I don't
project.
know. I don't know what the disk storage limit is. I'll have to check that out.
Okay. So then I think that's everything for KubeCon Salt Lake City. Does anybody have any questions regarding that? Uh, we'll be, socializing and letting people know, and it's always fun to just be there and hang out with people. Oh, then the final bit though is that they usually have like the possibility to do press releases, analyst relations stuff. So usually it's just we write a blog post and then we kind of pitch it to the CNCF to see whether they think it's newsworthy enough. So that's the final bit that I'll be working on. So we'll have a blog post on just sort of, I guess, summarizing all the great things that are happening with Flux this year. But if there's anything like particularly new that's coming up in the next 3 weeks, then yes, let me know because for analysts and press relations, they only care about what's new. It's not necessarily about what's most important. It's about what's most new. So that's what's literally called news. So it's a humbling experience because you're like, but this is so important. They're like, well, but it, it happened 6 weeks ago. So that segues into the Helix thing that I'll be talking about in a bit. But before that, I'll just do one final thing about KubeCon London. Reminder that the call for papers for that is due on November 24th. The event is in April. So I've finally been able to start reaching out to the Flux users that we know who might want to submit for that. We actually finally got feedback for one really great session that didn't get accepted for Salt Lake City. I got the feedback yesterday, which was basically, this was a great submission. We just like wanted more detail. So I'm seeing if that particular company is interested in working on that again and submitting again for London. And then Matthias, yes, I will work on booking a time, maybe even this week. I don't know, it's Kingdon, I was going to ask if we have trouble meeting this week, is weekend also an option, or is that completely off the plate?
Yes.
I'm not traveling until next week, so
Oh, when are you traveling?
uh, all next week I will be offline for most of the week at least.
Starting on Monday?
Yeah,
Okay. So,
probably starting on Sunday evening. So
okay. So
yeah.
if even tomorrow works, Matthias, you're in Ireland, so let me try for tomorrow. Maybe this time. I'll see if I don't have any issues. Does tomorrow this time work for both of you?
Yes.
Okay. I'll follow up to see if that's okay. Yeah. All right. Any questions about KubeCon London? Okay. So that segues into the helix.ml part. Kai here is at a company, helix.ml. I'm advising with them. They're in the Kubernetes space. Their CEO is Luke Marsden, who actually started DX at Weaveworks, which I then took over. So they know the Kubernetes space, they know the AI space. And so we are ambitiously hoping that we will have a cool announcement of Helix integrated with Flux and be able to go to KubeCon Salt Lake City, at least announce that and show it off. And so it's like a private ChatGPT that you can install on your own laptop or on your own infrastructure GPUs. And I think Kingdon, you were kindly one of our guinea pigs when we are practicing how to workshop this and get people to try it out. And so I invited Kai to come here to see. We think we need a Helix operator for Flux, but it'd be good to hear everybody's advice on if that's the direction to go and what exactly can we whiteboard and aspire to within the next, essentially, 3 weeks. So Kai, do you want to take over?
Awesome. Thank you, Tomo. Do you know there's really the best things are the really obvious ones, right? It's like news. I never thought of it that way. Oh yeah, the word is staring you in your face, and you just said it. All news is new. Yeah, we are thinking of building a Kubernetes operator for Helix app CRDs is the baseline. That's obviously useful generically for Helix because it's our Kubernetes integration story. What would be awesome is if for KubeCon we could find a very Flux workflow demonstration of all of those bits coming together. And in my mind, the story would be like, you have people who want to get their hands on this really cool new AI thing. You also have some GPUs lying somewhere in your world of compute infrastructure. How the hell are you going to quickly get these two things put together, like get your workforce to make use of AI? Step forward Helix and Flux, because without the combination of those two things, and I think that's the key message is like, fine, Helix is doing the kind of system prompt running on a GPU to get you a large language model to be useful part. But like, how the hell do you actually run any of it? And I think Flux is a very strong story there because in my mind, I mean, I've not workshopped any of the actual kind of storytelling around the demo, but what is the demo? There's this thing called AI spec, which if I link here, I think would be useful. 1 second, sorry. it's this thing. So we like, this is just out, like, you know, Helix's opinion on how you should declare the fields required for what we're calling an app. And at a base level, it's a system prompt, which model you should use, which RAG sources that you might use, other things that might influence building an application around a language model. We've put into a declarative form, and we're calling it AI spec. And then the obvious step forwards would be, what would happen if you wrapped that into a custom resource definition in Kubernetes? Because now, I don't think what we're trying to necessarily do is kind of say, hey, you should run Helix apps. You know, what am I trying to say here? The CRD thing is clearly off, like making it easy for people in cloud native space to run with Helix using their, you know, their existing toolkit. So in my head, like if you said to somebody, you know, here is AI spec, it documents all of the AI things. How do I actually do it? We just wrap it up in a CRD that we have, and you throw it at a Kubernetes cluster. Most cloud native people will understand what their workflow looks like. How do you actually get that to work for an organization, though? Let's imagine we have, I don't know, a marketing app that we want to deploy, and we have 5 or 6 copywriters, and they're all kind of busy using a UI to kind of tweak their system prompt, be more aggressive, be more funny, be less sarcastic. So immediately we've got value in users' hands. What does that app actually do underneath the hood to get these apps running behind the scenes? You could very much see Flux playing a role there. And then you could start to talk about GitOpsing the system prompts for language models. And like now Flux doing this continuous delivery based on GitOps, combined with the kind of actual system prompts getting updated using GitOps, there's something quite nice about that synergy. So I'll stop there, because that's basically in my head, like my task, if we agree what I just said is a useful thing, my task is to build the operator, which I've kind of already started. But the next step would then be to decide what that kind of use case is, as I've just described. Like, how does Flux, what strengths of Flux could we play to in the story that I've just concocted, or should we throw that story away and come up with a completely different story? I think that's
so it's an operator, if I can interject, to run AI workloads on Kubernetes.
Yeah,
sort of like a crossplane for.
Exactly. Yes,
Cool.
exactly. So we'd install Helix on the cluster, because Helix is obviously like, the Helix doesn't have to be on the cluster even, actually. You'd install Helix somewhere. You'd install the operator on the cluster pointing at the Helix somewhere. And that operator is just going to go CRD. The CRD is the simplest thing in the world, because it just is a wrapper for AI spec. And Helix somewhere knows how to consume AI spec and run the language model. And just a quick note on what I just said. It doesn't mean run the language model. It means run the app that gives you an endpoint to then make requests to the language model. Just to be clear, because when you apply an AI spec to Helix, it doesn't run anything. It is the metadata preparing for a language model to run with all of the correct settings, right? So the classic example is Marvin, the paranoid Android language chatbot, where all you have to do is give it a system prompt, and you apply that app to Helix, and then you get an endpoint to say, hey, I want to chat to Marvin. And at no point has a language model yet kicked in. It's just when the user says, hey, Marvin, how are you feeling? It will include the system prompt. And on that AI spec page, there's various other things that we're adding to this spec. So I won't bore you with like all of the different things that Helix can do. Let's just pour that into the kind of box called AI spec. I think the best demo, if I'm really honest, is just to mess with the system prompts, because it's like you don't really want to confuse people in this exact integration with all of the other things that Helix can do. It's much more like, I change the system prompt, I git push, it deploys because Flux is cool, is what I'm thinking here.
Have you all heard of the OpenFlux AI project? I'm just trying to dream up a use case that I could play along with. We, not me, one of the Flux community members created an LLM model that was trained to answer questions about Flux.
Huh.
So I would have no idea how to do this myself. And so if I wanted to replicate the experiment using some of the data that he's got here, like that would be a really good demo that I could think of. off the top of my head for the
So
technology that you're talking about.
use Flux to deploy a bot to ask questions about Flux.
Yeah, like say we wanted to add a section to the Flux website,
Yeah.
ask the Flux LLM a Flux question.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's
Because as
definitely
far as I know, like 9 months ago was the last time that this AI project was touched, and it was trained up once, and I definitely deployed it locally using Llama, but or Olama, but
Mhm.
you know, as far as to deploy it on a website, I would have no idea how to do that in Kubernetes. So
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
something that's quite cool that would make that demo sing quite nicely is we also have a embeddable chat widget. So once you run an app on Helix, you can then go copy paste. You know how you kind of various apps just give you a script tag, bang it into your website, boom, there the chat widget will appear. So you could actually do a kind of end-to-end, yeah, like a ask Flux. Ask Flux how I deployed this website might be a nice frame, isn't it?
And you know, once we have it deployed, I would become interested in all the other parts, like how do I actually train the model to answer a question that it failed at or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, yep, perfect. I mean, because you can do there's three ways actually of getting data into a Helix app. There's APIs, so just tell it here is a remote API and here is the API spec in order to speak to it. There's a RAG source, i.e., kind of look up at a database every time the user asks. We do have a fine tuning story as well, as in we can fine tune models based on documents that you feed in. So there's enough juice in the orange. I start with system prompt though, simply because it's the easiest thing. Once you throw a whole bunch of other stuff in the mix, like Kubernetes and Flux and everything else, a lot of people, I don't know. Well, I'm making the assumption that a lot of people have used ChatGPT, but the moment you dig one layer below, what actually happens? It's like, oh, okay, system prompt, what's that? And so I'm wary of like pouring too much language model stuff on people's mind when really what we're saying is the string between these components is the thing we're focused. But I don't know. I think that's where this is useful to talk about now.
I guess on a technical level, is there anything that you can, I mean, we've got Sunny here who's one of the core maintainers. So I was wondering if there's, in terms of, you know, I guess I was also hoping, you know, if Sunny, you might say like, oh, well, these are the limitations of Flux. And, um, you know, I'm not sure if that can be done, or does it sound, Kai, do you feel like you have the information you need?
I mean, hey, Sunny. Yeah, totally. I mean, really, I think for me, um, the use case of kind of let's index a website is, let's call that slightly more complicated than just changing a system prompt. So let's find what I'd really enjoy is like a use case that's not hard and also resonates with Flux users, right? So in my head, if I was pitching this to someone, I'd say, look at how awesome it is, where I just git push, and I've pushed an update to my AI app. It's Flux doing that. Flux can now do AI. So I think what is the actual use case? Now, getting a website to be indexed, I don't think that will be that hard, to be honest, because you could just literally, in Helix, you can just point it at the URL of a website. So I think all I'm doing is I'm being wary of how much time there is to build it on top of the operator underneath. So I suppose the simplest possible thing. At the same time, what I'm saying is make it exciting and make it simple. So yes,
Yeah.
my challenge is what actual demo do we do rather than the underlying tech. There you go. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, because I guess what I was hoping here was we wanted to know that, because the use case will talk to Flux users and they'll tell us what's interesting, but we have to demo that underlying technology, right? And you were concerned that whether that'd be possible within this time. So anyway, I don't want to take up the rest of the meeting, but just at least you've met people, and hopefully if we're on Slack
Yeah.
and we hit up against something that's specific to Flux,
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
yeah, we're hoping that we can at least whiteboard by Tuesday what exactly it will look like, and then we'll start talking to Flux users, and they'll tell us, you know, like, so Kingdon, thanks for sharing one use case, but we'll have actual users who have real use cases and they'll tell us, but we want to just get it to the place where we even know what we're whiteboarding in terms of the underlying tech. So I appreciate it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Did anybody have any other questions? Otherwise, I think
I can just say what I think about this. So I may be wrong, but it sounded like an application we have seen in a lot of places. There are like a common UI for connecting with different chat agents. One example I found is from Hugging Face Chat UI. There's a application you deploy, and from one interface you can connect to various backends. Could be OpenAI, Gemini, or anything. It sounds similar to this, but controlled by Kubernetes native things like CRDs. But thinking in terms of Flux, how does it relate to Flux? I don't know. It seems like just a normal application. If you can do any changes to such an application through GitOps, you can do similar changes to other applications like Hugging Face has. You're just changing things in Git, and Flux is delivering that. So I'm not sure what's unique or what can be there for a Flux user. Flux user can get the same using other projects.
that's helpful.
Yeah. I
Go
mean,
ahead.
I have an immediate answer that is, I think the best answer is that is completely the correct assessment of what's going on. As in, like, that is literally, that's why I'm like, we need to find the right use case here, because otherwise, really, all we're doing is pushing AI spec configuration out onto a Kubernetes cluster really well, because that's what Flux does really well. But there's not a unique aspect of this that says Helix isn't anything other than just another application. Otherwise, like, I'm struggling to not kind of
Oh,
pull wool over people's eyes. Right? That is exactly why I'm like, we need to find the use case that's exciting, which is why I like the idea of let's use Flux to deploy an app to ask questions about the Flux website. At least has a lot more to do with Flux than let's just use it to update a bit of YAML. So I think that's exactly the question I'm struggling with is like, what use case what demo do we pick? 'Cause it's not hard to get the tech stack to work, but what demo do we pick where there is actually a point to it? Exactly.
well, also, when I asked this question of Luke, at least my understanding was that there is still a baseline. Certainly there's stuff out there, but there is a baseline where for people who have committed to Kubernetes infrastructure, and now suddenly someone on the business side in their company is like, oh my God, we need AI, you know, like, well, what do you mean? Like, it's not necessarily easy from day one if you already committed to Kubernetes to be able to install and work you know, necessarily chatbots and so, or tools, LLMs. And so Helix has been designed to be, let's say, you know, kind of cloud native, and it has that understanding. And also, you know, there's the people who built it are coming from that universe. So we do think that there is a differentiator where you can start with greater ease than if, you know, you just go online and say, okay, these are things I need to do. They don't work out of the box with Kubernetes, and Helix does help with that. So I think that's what we're aiming for, and Flux is the sort of, you know, addition that we want to make sure makes it even more powerful. We'll certainly look at all of these, but yeah, it's more that there are things that are Kubernetes specific. You know, there's also Cube AI, I think it was. You know, we've looked at their stuff. There's stuff out there, but it's not necessarily easy, and we have done some of that heavy lifting. So anyway, just wanted to know if we'll get this going right away, because we want to know within basically the next 48 hours if like we can even do this, especially in this time frame. So we appreciate it. Anyway, sorry.
I have some more questions.
Sure.
So this Helix, is it a service, an external centralized service? Can it be self-hosted?
Yes, it can be self-hosted. I think it's got the Docker license, so it's like if you do less than 10 million a year, it's essentially free. So it's like source available is what Luke keeps reminding me. So I'm like, it's open source. It's like, no, it's not. It's source available. But yes, you can host it yourself. If you make less than 10 million, you have to pay for it.
So if you write an operator for, say, Helix, the operator can configure Helix or maybe deploy Helix. You can write an operator that can, like the Flux operator now. Flux operator deploys Flux with different configurations. So this Helix operator, or the operator that you're trying to build, can deploy Helix with different configurations, can make it easier for the users or operators to make something available easily for their customers.
Yeah.
And that can be controlled using Flux, but it's not specific to Flux anyway. You can use any tools.
Yeah. No, I mean,
But-
that would be awesome. I would regard that as a decent upgrade. It's definitely going to be harder to get that to happen than just an AI spec to be deployed. But yes, as in that would be definitely valuable. Like install Helix itself using Flux and then get the AI apps installed on Helix using Fluxes. I think what Tamal said is very good, useful. Like the baseline is like a Helix app is just another app as far as Flux is concerned, but because Helix makes running AI on Kubernetes easy, therefore now Flux makes running AI on Kubernetes easy. I think both is true. And so I think there is value in both of those. But yes, Tamer, as you said, I don't want to occupy the whole meeting, so I'll shush now, I promise.
Thank you, Sunny. That was really helpful.
Next topic.
Dipti?
Hey, hi. I just wanted to quickly give some updates on the Git repository, GitHub app, and had a couple of questions around testing as well. So in terms of updates, I think I was able to try out the POC and have a good understanding. And I think just wrapping up on the coding and testing for this, so we'll have something out soon. The questions that I had was when I was looking at the GitHub app tests that not app, sorry, GitHub tests that we have today in the end-to-end test section. I saw that so the way we kind of configure the app, like we have a GitHub workflow, and that has like a secret for the token and a pre-created Flux CD like testing bot or some organization, right? Yeah. So for the app, I wasn't able to find a programmatic way of kind of creating the app on the fly. So it looks like just like we pre-create the pat, we would have to pre-create the GitHub app, and we'll get the app ID, install ID, and the private key set up on that Flux CD bot test repo. And use it that way in the test. So just wanted to, because I don't have access to any of those, I just wanted to confirm that that is my understanding over there is right.
I can make some guesses. So I know that we have an organization, and as for what you said, I think in the workflows, we have some tokens from the organization saved, and workflows can just use that. So look at the code. I'm not sure. Maybe you need to create a new repository or using the token, or maybe it's already there. You can use the repository.
Okay, but I'll check that again. But I looked at the code, and it's just that I think the part where creating the GitHub app would be some like a prerequisite step, just like we have to have the pat created today. So just
Register.
wanted to register and install it on the org. Yeah, and I'll check if I have access itself to that org and repository. That's something else that I need to check.
I think it would be better if we don't depend on GitHub workflows. If you can write some scripts which you can run locally against your own created organization, that would be ideal. Because if I want to test the same thing, I cannot do it locally from my computer. I have to depend on GitHub workflows. So if you can write some scripts, you can run locally, but that same can be used in workflows as well, removing the extra things that are needed for local testing. I think that would be better.
But like, you mean including creation of the GitHub app and installing the app on the org, all of automating that part? Okay.
If you can write some scripts, simple scripts, need not be very long.
Okay.
Maybe you can use Terraform if that makes it easy.
Okay.
If a
Yeah,
Terraform
I'll check.
provider can make it easier than just calling their API directly, or maybe they have a Go API, which may be even easier.
Yeah, I think that is the part I was not able to find. Like the Go API for app, like there is a manifest way of kind of creating the GitHub app, but that still requires the user to kind of get redirected to a URL which they kind of click to create the GitHub app. But like there is for security reasons is what I read. They don't really allow you to just have an API which goes to your org or your personal project and kind of create a GitHub app there, as well as installation of that app on your repo. That also requires like a manual kind of step. So I'll check again if there's something that I'm missing.
That's fine. If it requires manual fix, you can just document them and we'll see what to do about it.
Okay, yeah. The other question that I had was in terms of the test variations, it looks like today we are testing both init and clone way of kind of testing in that GitHub tests. So like in the previous iteration with the Azure provider, I think in the clone code paths, we had added the provider auth, but there is an init way of kind of setting things up where the provider auth was not used like for Azure. I just wanted to check, is that init just something that is used in testing, or there's like an actual use case where we need to kind of support provider auth there as well? It's just a matter of adding that additional code path, I guess, but wanted to check if it's just a test only thing or there is more to it.
I don't remember how or where we call this init.
All the code paths that I saw in source controller were all just calling clone.
I have to check where
I can
what
share
caused this thing. Okay, the clone, individual clone functions, the clone branch, they internally call init. See that? Does that help? I have not seen the test, so I cannot say how it's using init.
I'll share a pointer and I can chat with you offline as well regarding that. And then I also wanted to check regarding GitHub Enterprise, like, do we have anything there to test things already? Because I think this particular use case has two things where we kind of need to be able to test it, both with GitHub Enterprise because we changed like a API URL. So is there any other part of the code that already does anything with GitHub Enterprise?
Not that I'm aware of, we can ask Stefan. And I think the Flux organization itself is part of a GitHub Enterprise under CNCF. If needed, maybe we can create a test org, maybe.
Okay.
So I have to ask Stefan whenever he joins.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. Cool. Yeah, I think that was about it. I'll have something out soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
Last topic, right? Is there anything else?
I think you're up.
Okay. I wanted Stefan to be here to discuss this because it's a lot of decision making things. What do we do about certain things? So I was working on cache, simplification of the cache, which was proposed maybe a month ago. I have linked the pull request. We open the pull request, you'll see the gist, which is my initial improvement proposal, how we can simplify the API and make it easier to use. And I found a lot of things while actually implementing it, which I did not consider, especially things related to metrics. And I think the decisions I took may be fine. So I'm wondering how much detail I should go in. So the initial Flux cache implementation was based on Kubernetes objects. It required creation of store object to perform any operation. You do a get, set, delete, whatever you do, it requires creation of a store object. And after discussing my proposal and going through all the potential use cases of the Flux, the cache in Flux, we agreed that we don't have a use case for storing Kubernetes objects. Most of the time, we'll be storing strings or byte arrays. So there's no need to require creating a store object which has the Kubernetes metadata. So these things were clear before, but I found that the way it's implemented, the cache and the metrics were very tightly coupled. And metrics, and I found some commit messages where it said the cache is a self instrumented cache, which is good, which is a good property. We would need it. So it records things like how many cache operations took place. It exports those as Prometheus metrics, which are useful. But it also has a metric about cache event, which is like cache hit or miss. And this event is associated, or at least the way I saw the code, it's not written in comments, but the code said it's associated with the object being reconciled. So the cache or the metrics need to be aware of the higher level object that's being reconciled to insert the labels of the higher level object in the cache. So example, you're reconciling OCI repository, which gets a auth token, and we are caching the auth token. So there will be a metric called cache hit with labels kind, name, and namespace belonging to the OCI repository object. So there is a coupling between the parent object that is causing the reconciliation and the usage of the cache and the cache itself. And because of this need, I see a use case, or you can justify why the store object exists. But I think that complicates the overall API. Just for making the cache self-instrumenting, you're making the API complicated. If there is a need to do this, we can implement it at a higher level. The base cache can be generic, no Kubernetes dependency. But if you want it to be self-instrumenting with Kubernetes objects, we can build on top of it. We can say, I gave an example before, kube cache, which can expect objects to be in Kubernetes Kubernetes object type. So I decided to remove all these things. Like there is no dependency or anything related to Kubernetes. Cache is a simple cache. It's a generic cache. You can store whatever data types you want to use, and it operates on keys. You just pass the key. Previously, we had a kind of a function. You pass a function which knows how to extract a key from the given store object. I think that was one of the reasons why it gave us complicated. Now that has been removed. It's just a key. It's a string key. You pass whatever key you want. It can be your object, or you combine the naming space, whatever. You can do whatever you need. But if you want to have the previous behavior, you can build on top of this. You can put the things we had in the initial cache implementation on top of this. And the higher level, you can add those functions that extract key from the object itself. You can do that. But the core cache is simple. And regarding the metric, the cache hit and miss metric, I made it similar to what we have in our other metric implementation. Like there's a runtime metric in the runtime package where the caller has to explicitly call the metric recorder. So whatever happened, whatever operation took place, depending on if the operation succeeded or failed, the caller will call the metric recorder saying it was a cache hit against this object. or cache miss against this object. And there's one more thing which I found that was not considered in the initial implementation, where the metric deletion was not taken into account. So you create a metric which is associated with a high-level flux object. When the flux object gets deleted, the cache did not provide any way to delete the metric. Metric is time-based, so there's no reason to keep the metric when the parent object get deleted. So I've added a new function so that the high-level caller can delete metric associated with the object that created the whole thing. We do the same for the other cache. In source controller, we have a cache in Helm repository, and when the Helm repository object gets deleted, when doing the deletion, we delete the cache as well, so the metric as well for the cache. So I think those decisions are good, but I just wanted others' opinion on that. And I'm trying to document the details of the pull request description. I'll have to add some more of it. I'm just preparing to talk about it in the meeting. While going through all these, I had some more questions about certain things that we need to consider when we start using the cache. So we will have a scenario where one controller will use the cache at multiple places for different reasons. We can consider a source controller. We'll have a Helm index cache. We'll have a say repository cache, which will cache the token, auth token. The Git repository will also have Git auth token. So there are variations of what the cache is used for. You can categorize them like auth cache, which OCA repository and Git repository use. And then Helm repository uses the Helm index cache. All are backed by the same implementation. And Helm, if you use Helm OCI, that'll also use the auth cache. Each of these cache usage will start exporting Prometheus metrics with the same name. Names are hard-coded in the current implementation. I wanted to discuss and then try to change that. So there are some names like GOTK cache event total. For Helm index or auth token cache, everywhere the event name would be the same, and there's no way to distinguish between what is this cache for. Is it for Helm index or is it for auth tokens? So I thought maybe we should accept a name which you can insert in the metric name. So it could be like GOTK underscore auth underscore cache event total, or GOTK underscore Helm index cache event total. That'll make it easier to have different metrics for different things. I think we have not considered any of these things, and we need to decide how to do this. Does it make sense? A lot of it is in code. I'm trying to describe this.
I think at a high level, it made sense to me what you said. Did you say in the beginning when you were discussing the like the new APIs that you have introduced with just like a string key, is that in addition to the Kubernetes?
No, that's
or
removed.
you've just removed all the
There's no
Kubernetes
dependency
ones?
in Kubernetes anymore.
Okay, so there's only one way to do it, which is the easier way of using strings as the key.
And one more thing, I've removed the generic type T from simple things like cache options or store options. Previously, store options had a generic T because it had the metric configuration as well. But because you have decoupled metric, we don't need the T. There's no generic. The option has a cleanup interval and one more thing, but there's no like type dependency on the cache type. So more simplification. What were you about to say?
So it'll be string for everything now because there is no
Hmm.
generic type. Yeah, makes sense. And I think that was the
You
usage that
just
we'd
pass
seen
key
everywhere.
for most of the things. And when you need to deal with value, you pass the value of whatever the generic type.
Yep,
I
makes
can
sense.
write a Go doc about how do we use it in controller's perspective or in context of controller. I can write some docs about it. But I want to discuss in this meeting what's happening. So any more questions? I can share a few more things.
No, go you go ahead first. Yeah.
Actually, I had
One
just
more?
one thing. Sorry, I know I was a couple of minutes late, so I just realized, Kingdon, did you already, at least for me, Augie, you're new, so I didn't know if you already said, have you been here before? If not, welcome. At least you're new for
No,
me.
I haven't.
Okay.
And I mentioned earlier that my primary reason for joining this meeting today was to see what it is all about, what you guys are doing, and to what extent contributing to the activities was something that is of interest to me also.
Awesome. So you've been using Flux?
Yes.
Oh, awesome.
And I just recently put forward a proposal to enhance Flux with continuous testing capabilities, something that the telecommunications industry is interested in.
Very nice. Awesome. Okay, great.
Do we have any issue about the proposal you state?
Yes, can we add it to the agenda notes?
Do you have a link to the proposal, Augie?
No, I don't think it has been put on the CNCF Flux platform yet. I'm currently discussing it with Deutsche Telekom and some folks from Mirantis. I'm waiting for their feedback to move this forward.
Oh, very nice. Shoot, what was I want to say Victor, but that's not his name. Is it over at Deutsche Telekom?
Oh, it's Michael Severa,
Okay, cool.
the guy that is heading up the 5G project at DT, the Mavenir 5G implementation.
Excellent, excellent.
Can you
Cool.
elaborate a little bit on continuous testing and what does that mean?
Well, the key thing that telecommunications organizations are interested in is to have a clear view of the health of the services that run in the cloud. And currently, there's a lot of focus on making sure that a pod with applications running in it comes up and is working properly. But whether the service quality is really at par is something that requires some additional insight that in the past was acquired using like service health check-in. And the idea is to extend the idea of service health checking to be something that continuously is happening in the cloud, collects data, and then essentially automates any inference making or any inferencing that is required to maybe update the configuration. That's the key idea behind it.
Sounds sort of like a flagger with a infinite time horizon. That sounds really
Yes, absolutely. Yep. No, you hit it right on the dot because that's what I came away with studying what's currently available by way of Flux and Flagger as well. Yep, absolutely.
Cool. I look forward to hearing more about that at the future calls. Are you in a European time zone?
Yeah, I'm calling from Frankfurt in Germany. In Germany.
Okay, cool. Because there's also because this time is every 2 weeks, and then there's another time that's a little bit more European friendly, where I think Stefan might be
Yeah,
there
but I
more.
gathered that the US friendly slot has more of the quote unquote key individuals on it. But I'm not sure if that was just a conjecture and or whether I was misled about it.
Well, I would love to be at both, but I'm in California. So yes, this is the better one.
Yeah, and I guess for Stefan, the European one is the better one. So I
Yes.
make a point of joining that session next week also.
Yes, yes. Stefan sometimes come to this one, but I know it's pretty late. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. And
You're welcome.
yeah, we'll look forward to hearing more in the future and seeing that issue posted eventually on Flux and GitHub. Sunny, back to you.
Some more cache related things. I'll answer. So the reason for canceling the cache in the previous release was because we did not consider a lot of things. And I think we did the right thing after finding all the things I found. I was looking at Sule's adoption of the cache in source controller, the PR. And looking at that, I found that we are not, there's somebody at the door. I'll be back for 2 minutes.
It's bad timing. Did anybody have anything else while we're waiting? Actually, I should ask Kingdon, what days are you away starting next week? Oh, you're
I
muted.
just muted myself to talk. I'm going to be traveling in Western New York Monday through Friday.
Okay, so just
We'll be on the way Sunday night. So
okay.
Yep.
I'm in Japan starting on Wednesday for 2 weeks, but I will try to still be on top of chatting with any Flux users. Sorry, Sunny, go ahead.
Okay. So the source controller implementation, it did not provide any controls for the cache, like the cache cleanup and what's the other one? We provide two things, right? Cache,
Capacity and interval.
capacity editor, right. So so in that implementation, it had default capacity and implementation. Capacity was like 10, and the interval, cleanup interval was 1 minute. And I wondered, is that enough? I don't think it's enough. When, let's say, oh, sure, your token may be valid for more than an hour. And so maybe for each cache, you have to provide a separate flag. Because how do you decide? How do you fine-tune individual cache? Maybe the helm index cache is fine, like maybe an hour or 30 minutes is okay. But maybe for GitHub or Azure or whatever, maybe you need longer TTL or capacity. And if how do you provide ways to configure that? Do we add flags for each of these caches, like separate flags? Or do we make something common, like all the auth cache are configured using this auth cache flag? But will that be enough? Maybe the auth may vary between the providers. Maybe such TTLs may vary for Azure and AWS.
When I used the cache, I found that name to be a little misleading. I expected that to be the time to live for the cache entry, but it was actually the interval at which the cleanup runs, because the expires at, that is the one that determines how long the entry will live. So for example, for Azure, it was 24 hours. So the token is actually valid for 24 hours, and the interval was just trying to see if it needs to clean up any expired entries at that interval. So I first earlier misunderstood it that it's the interval that the cache entry is valid, but it's actually just the cleanup, how often the cleanup runs.
I need to check the helm index cache. How is it doing cleanup? How is it deciding? Does the implementation matches with the expiring cache we have now or not? I think you're right. I have noticed this before. Forgot about it. Yeah. So how do we decide? Do we have separate flags for each of the caches we have? Or do we find something common between the caches? But that may have scenarios where different providers may have different ETL. What do we do? So I'm not sure what to do. And I think these are the things we need to document and consider what to do. So I was proposing we'll have I said no RFC. We can have RFC, but it's more of an informational RFC. You can just have a GitHub issue where we'll document how cache would be used across Flux. We'll document the usage in each of the controllers or each of the array considers, and we'll document in detail how will the cache be used, the keys for each of the use cases. For Git repository, for Azure, we'll use this key. For GitHub, we'll use this other key because it's more appropriate for GitHub. So all these things have to be documented before, instead of implementing on the go. We just implement and take decisions. Because I think we need to involve Paulo, the security engineer in Flux, to take his opinion on what's safer. Because he had some concerns about cache abuse if it's not configured properly. So
Makes sense.
I'll work on the issue after the simplification work. Maybe in a few weeks we'll have an issue with the details. I'll ask for feedback. It will not be complete. I'll need others' feedback to fill in on all the details, how to do things. Okay, that's it. Can discuss more next week. The cache, the pull request, cache simplification pull request, its implementation is ready, but I'll just spend some more time looking for other places where it can be optimized or simplified more. And I'll document more why we are doing the simplification and how can we have the old behavior if we need on top of it. I'll just add all those details. Sule already messaged me in this meeting. He's messaging me. I think he was not aware of this change, and he's messaging me now. I'll talk to him. Okay, that's it for cache.
Hey guys.
I gotta go as well. Good seeing you.
Okay.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, folks.
Bye.